What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Facility. I get so amped up and start talking too fast. I didn't even say this right. Welcome to another episode of Facility Management Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Javier. In this episode, I'm going to be going over my 5 top podcasts that I listen to. Now, you're probably wondering, wait, Javier, you listen to podcasts? Like you produce podcasts, but you listen to podcasts? Yeah. How do you think I come up with cool ideas? Just kidding. I have a lot of great ideas, but podcasts is what keep me sharp. There's a stat out there I read. I don't even know what the exact number is, but I read this a while ago that people that make below a certain wage, like I think under $100,000 or under $80,000 a year. I think it was under $100,000 actually. Those folks that make under $100,000 typically listen to the radio. And then folks that make over $100,000 a year typically listen to podcasts. And usually those podcasts are like in their industry or like improvements and stuff like that. Interesting stats. Okay, look it up. Okay, I can't tell you where it came from. I'm not gonna I'm just simply saying I read some sort of stat like that usually the more informed are usually listening to podcasts. The ones that want to sharpen their skills are usually listening to podcasts. And you, as one of our listeners, are probably one of those folks because you listen to my podcast. And to be honest, I want you to only be listening to my podcast, but at the same time, I'm like, I would be doing you a disservice if I told you that my podcast was the best and don't listen to any other podcasts out there. Because in reality, there are a ton of other podcasts that can actually serve you well. Okay, and so I think you deserve to listen to other podcasts. Now, I will iterate this, that the other podcasts are not in the facility industry, okay? So I personally do not listen to facility management podcasts. And you're like, well, why don't you do that? You offer a facility management podcast and you don't listen to other facility management podcasts. The reason is this. I talk about marketing in the facility management industry. I don't talk about facility management. Does that make sense? And so I am not as knowledgeable about facility management as maybe you are. Okay, so you as my listener, you're probably more knowledgeable about the facility industry than I am. But I bring a ton of wealth and knowledge when it comes to marketing in the facility industry. Make a difference? So what do? I listen to other marketing podcasts and I sit there and I'm like, man, that's a really good idea. I should try that. Or, oh man, I remember that. I did something just like that. And then I use that as a topic to discuss for one of my, my podcast episodes. And so today, what I want to do is I want to share some podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis. It depends on the mood and what I'm working on and that sort of stuff. But these are podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis. If I'm going into the office, which is roughly 2, maybe 3 times a week, I will listen to one of these podcasts. If I'm going for like a light run or walk, I listen to the podcast. If I'm doing a workout, listen to the podcast. Now, if I'm riding my bike, like my NordTrack bike, my trainer, then I don't listen to a podcast because I'm listening to the dude that's telling me, to keep working harder. If I'm mountain biking, I don't typically listen to podcasts because my heart rate's going through the roof. That like listening to a podcast is the last thing I want to listen to when I'm mountain biking. Okay, but if I'm doing more, things that I can kind of take my mind off of stuff, like, yeah, I'll totally listen to podcasts. Like last night, I was doing installation in my basement. We're getting our basement finished. I was listening to a podcast. And a lot of the stuff they're going over, I'm like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, oh, that's a good idea. I forgot about that. And so they're good. And so I think podcasts are definitely something that you should be engaging more with. So yes, I want you to listen to my podcast, but you should listen to others as well too. And so you're like, all right, Javier, hurry up. Tell me the 5 damn podcasts that I should be listening to. All right, so number 1, you probably should not be surprised when I say this, but you probably already know, if you're one of my avid listeners, you'll know that Russell Brunson is probably one of my favorite marketers out there right now. Hands down, probably the best marketer, okay? And the reason I say this is because what he's done and what he's been able to do in his space and how he's been able to do it. Okay, he's grown a business from 0 to over 100 million. I think it's now worth, I think they've made like over 150 million in like 7 years with 0 venture capital money. That is insane. Okay, that's impressive. So Russell Brunson has a podcast called Marketing Secrets, and it's just him. He occasionally invites guests, but it's not often, and it's just his marketing process. What he thinks about certain things. Like I was listening to a podcast that he launched, I think on Monday, and it was about frameworks and creating frameworks and that sort of stuff. And he was referring to Napoleon Hill. And so, anyways, Russell's podcast, I refer to it a lot because there's a lot of gold nuggets in there that you might be listening to the podcast. If you listen to Marketing Secrets, you're like, well, Javier, my business is different. It's really not that different. I promise you. Okay. Like you have customers, you have vendors, you have a need, your customers have a problem, your vendors need some business. Like you're like everybody else. Okay. I'm sorry to break it to you. You're just like everybody else. And your business isn't that different. And so some people, when they listen to these podcasts, especially like Russell Brunson's podcast, they're like, well, Javier, I don't have a funnel. Well, you do if you would create one and if you would think outside the box a little bit. So I've heard stuff like that. Or Javier, like what he's talking about isn't the same. He's talking more about like online business and for like smaller entrepreneurs. He's helped people make hundreds of millions of dollars making legitimate businesses kind of like yours. I'm dead serious when I say this, okay? So I would venture to say that he knows a thing or two, okay? So that's a podcast I would put into your list. Another one that I enjoy listening to is a podcast by Dave Gerhart, which is called the Exit 5 Podcast. This has been named numerous podcasts, like different ones. It used to be like, what was it? Gosh, it was like DGMG Marketing Leaders or something like that. And then it was, God, I don't remember what they were. They were different podcasts. He's rebranded it several different times. So this new one now is called Exit 5 Podcast. So Dave Gerhart is a former CMO for Privy, which is the number one app for what's the e-commerce platform? I should go to their site. I should have known this before I even started this episode. The number one e-commerce platform for Shopify. There we go. The number one e-commerce platform or like add-on to whatever for Shopify. And so he was a CMO there. And then he was also the former CMO for Drift, which is one of the chat bots that you can install onto your website. And he really helped Drift go from like where they were at the bottom to becoming a market leader for that particular technology. And then what he does is that he typically interviews some of the top CMOs in the SaaS industry throughout the country. And these are like big name people where they have teams of, 5, 10, 20, 100 employees in the marketing department. And these companies are making several $1 million a year, okay? Either they've gone through rounds of funding, they are just crushing it on in social. There's one company called Gong, where that team was small. It was like 4 people, very strategic. And they were making like multi 8 figures per year with a small marketing team, big sales team, but just doing some damage, okay? Like that's impressive. But like Dave has got enough clout in the LinkedIn world where he can send out a DM to like the CMO of these large companies and the VPs of marketing to these large companies and get them onto a podcast to interview them, ask them questions, and they share everything. And you're like, holy shit, I didn't pay for any of this stuff, and you're sharing all this stuff on how to grow a business or how to grow a marketing team or how to launch a campaign or how to do an ABM strategy or how to he's asking all these cool people. And I'm like, so when I listen to it, I'm like salivating. I'm like, that's genius. That's genius. I feel as though I should be sending the dude checks in the mail because he's giving me that much info. All right. So Dave is amazing. The next podcast that I enjoy listening to, and I just kind of got a kick on them more recently again, is by Dr. J.D. Peterson. And he has a co-host. I forget her name. So if you are an avid listener to this podcast, I apologize for forgetting her name, but she's new to me, okay? But Dr. J.D. Peterson is one of the hosts for the podcast called Marketing Made Simple. And this podcast is really around the whole story brand kind of strategy, where this was all started by Donald Miller. Donald Miller started a company called Story Brand, and that company essentially really just kind of stuck a stake in the ground, saying we are the ones that know the most about story, and this is how you grow your business is through story, and this is how you use this framework of telling a story. You follow the 7-step process of telling a story. That is their thing. So Marketing Made Simple is really all about following this 7-step framework on everything, and that they really believe that your marketing should be easy to do, all right? Especially if you follow the 7-step framework. So in their podcast, it's typically 2 people kind of talking on that, 2 hosts, and then JJ would actually go interview someone for like 10 or 15 minutes. So before the podcast interview, they talk about, like, they lead up to the podcast and say, like, do you ever feel like this? And, and they were kind of having a chit chat about this, that, and the other. It was like one of them that I was listening to yesterday was like, what did you used to do as a kid on Saturday mornings? We're like, watch cartoons, eat bowls of cereal. And they're talking about all these things about like the nostalgia and reminiscing all of this. Saturday morning, whenever we listen to like watch cartoons and stuff, and then they tied that into an episode that they interviewed somebody, and then that's kind of how they do it. And that's their whole thing is they have 2 hosts and they have a guest, and then usually the guest is interviewed by one person, and then you go from there. So that podcast is very good for those of you that struggle on understanding the power of telling story and how to create story, okay? Like the Exit 5 podcast is great for FM companies that are in the SaaS space. Like iViewIt would be one of those companies that are in the SaaS space. Like Corrigo. Let's see, what are some other ones? Like I know all these in my head and I can't. Service Channel. So like those kind of companies, like you have some sort of digital product, like that Exit 5, great podcast for that. Like Marketing Secrets, probably just for almost any type of entrepreneurial mindset. And when I say entrepreneur, I'm not talking about like entrepreneur that like, is making, 5 figures. I'm talking like it could be grow into 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, that sort of stuff. Marketing Made Simple, great for creating and how to design and understand how to tell stories, all right? Because that's so important. Like that's a piece of marketing that no one is using in the facility space right now, which is why I tell so many stories within my podcast, is because you need to be using it, okay? All right. The next podcast that I enjoy listening to is Online Marketing Made Easy by Amy Porterfield. So if you're not familiar with Amy Porterfield, she is she's a former executive in the corporate world. She used to be like, I don't know how high up, but she was like up there with Tony Robbins as part of their marketing team, creating content for Tony Robbins. Like the Tony Robbins, the dude that just makes you walk on coals and like makes you feel as though you can conquer the world and dominate anything. I've seen Tony Robbins live before, and it was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life. Okay, Tony Robbins is the real deal. Like if there are people out there like, I don't know, he's not all that like so-and-so isn't that great, and that was Tony Robbins, real deal. Now, if you go in there with preconceived notions about who Tony Robbins is and why you don't like him, this and the other, then you're gonna be like, Tony Robbins is a piece of shit. But if you go in there not knowing anything, just like open mind, be like, all right, I want to learn from Tony because he's one of the greatest and smartest entrepreneurs, and he's trained some of the best athletes, best businessmen and women, and biggest innovators in almost any industry. He's helped them create better mindsets to be the best at what they're doing. That's Tony, right? And when you listen to him talk, it's like, holy shit, okay? So Amy Porterfield was one of the content writers for Tony Robbins. So then she left and started her own company. And she basically has an agency. Her thing is like creating courses and email marketing. That's kind of like her niche. And so, when Amy came out and launched her business like 10, 12 years ago, it didn't take off very quickly. And like any business, like that's just what it is. Like everyone thinks that you're an overnight success, and no one sees all the pains and struggles that your company goes through. But her thing is course creation, email marketing, and there's like a couple other things that she's really good at. But she has a high listenership, all right? And so I would venture to say that Amy Porterfield is one of the top marketers out there that understands how to like structure what you're trying to teach. And so you might be thinking like, well, how the hell am I going to use like course creation for facility management? Are you kidding me? Almost all of you IFMs can easily create a course and sell it to FMs that they probably would pay for. You just got to find a way in how to market it correctly, structure the offer correctly, and then sell it. Like any other course that you end up buying. You wonder why so many people buy so many damn frying pans every year? It's because of the way the message is structured in those infomercials. It's no different from courses, okay? So what I'm getting to is that you should be exploring creating a course for your business, okay? So if you're an IFM, maybe you can create a preventative maintenance electrical course or preventative maintenance for HVAC. And maybe it's information in there that would work great for facility managers that have less than 100 locations or have a tight budget, and they don't really have like the ability of hiring like the top HVAC service providers, but they have a strong handyman that can manage 20 locations, but the handyman needs a little bit extra training. Buy a course. Offer that course for that handyman that's working for the FM company that has 20 locations that he's managing in a city. Sell the course for $500. Sell the course for $1,000. Hell, if no one else is offering courses, sell the course for $5,000. Do you know why? That still saves them more money. Think about that. $5,000 spent one time. That can be used as refreshers and for everybody else to watch. Like, think about that. That can be an entry-level product for your business. So instead of just selling them directly into services, you could do, hey, this is a DIY product. Okay, this is our DIY product, and people can do it themselves. And then you're like, but that's not our business. Yeah, but once they buy that and then they exceed and they grow out of that place, guess who they're going to call next for the next service up? You, because you sold them something that helped them. They've grown. They now can't sustain their business model with a handyman doing HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all this other stuff. They need like a true HVAC contractor. So they're going to call up ABC Facilities and be like, hey, so I bought this course from you guys 18 months ago, and now we're in the process of opening 300 locations in the United States over the next 12 months. And I need someone to help manage those locations. Din, din, din. Like, that's you. That's your company. So where I'm coming from is that, see, this is what I try to tell people in the facility management space. Don't listen to these podcasts and think that this stuff doesn't work for you. Listen to these podcasts and say, how can I apply what they're doing to my space? How can I improve what they're doing to my space? How the hell do you think I came up with this podcast? It wasn't like it was a genius idea I just woke up on. It was, how can I take what I've learned in 15 years of marketing and apply it to the facilities industry that I've never been in before, for a HVAC mechanical company. And then I did it, and I was like, crap, these stats are pretty insane. These results are pretty amazing. And then I'm like, how do I teach what I just did? And this is what we're doing. So understand that. All right, that's the 4th podcast. Last podcast, this one, I'm not going to lie, I have not taken the time to dive into all these podcasts, but I listened to a lot of the snippets, and they're really flipping good. So this one is by Chris Walker, and the podcast is called State of Demand Gen. All right, so Chris Walker, how he started his career in this space is simply insane. This is the power of content creation and picking a channel and just doubling down on it and going all in. So back in 2019, he started posting videos on LinkedIn about different topics of marketing and what his thoughts were. And he was doing this on a daily basis. He would record a podcast, post videos, record a podcast, post videos. He would interview people that were big wigs, post, snippets of these podcasts, and he would continue to do that. And he had very polarizing opinions. And so you might be wondering, what is this podcast about? It's about demand generation. He believes that demand generation is the only form of marketing. There is a world out there where people think that, and when I say think, I'm not saying they're wrong, right? They believe that demand gen is the only form of marketing that you should be doing. Not that you shouldn't be doing any kind of paid leads or like lead gen kind of stuff, but the demand gen has more value than any other form of marketing, okay? And if you're not familiar with demand gen, I've mentioned this before in my previous podcast episodes. I can't even remember what episode it was, but I've mentioned this before. But demand gen basically is where you create content that creates demand, meaning this podcast. What do you think this podcast is doing? It's getting people to learn about my company. It's getting people to learn about me. It's getting people to learn about facility management marketing. And I'm slowly creating demand. And then I've got a website that I'll be, posting these podcasts on so that people can reach it. And then I'll be having blogs, and I'll be talking about marketing in there. And I'll be having other things and selling other products and services and posting content. And then I'll be using social media to post my information about this podcast and about these different episodes. You see what's going on? I am creating demand. Probably a little bit slower than like a company that, like, say, for instance, I work for, Ratmate, because we're creating demand at a higher pace. However, I also have a team. I also have 8 to 10 hours per day focused to growing that versus my 30 to 45 minutes per episode to grow my side hustle. So his approach is very creating demand, and I like it. It's strong. Whenever he posts stuff on LinkedIn, I listen and I read it, and it's very polarizing. It's like interesting things. And so he has this like I think a weekly podcast that he does live, and he's been doing this for like going on 3 years, I believe, and he has a huge following on LinkedIn. But this is literally came on board with nothing, meaning didn't have a big following, didn't have a podcast, wasn't really known, none of this stuff, didn't have his own company, and now he is one of the top agencies for SaaS marketing. He focuses strictly in the SaaS industry. That's kind of his niche, his bread and butter. Okay, so those are the 5 podcasts that I recommend you listening to if you have to listen to another podcast that it does not involve me. I'm just kidding. I highly recommend to listen to those guys. Like, I can tell you this right now. If I was ever a guest in one of those 5 podcasts, oh my gosh, I would lose my mind. Okay? If one of those 5 people said, "Hey, Javier, I'd love to have you as a guest on our podcast," I would just lose my mind, and I would be ecstatic, because that would mean the world to me. Because these are people, I'm serious when I say this, these are marketers that I look up to. And honestly, like, of these 5 marketers that I'm looking at, I would probably say that 2, maybe 3 are like, I think it's attainable. Like, you're not that far ahead of me. I'm not saying they're not doing well. I'm saying, like, if I try to compare myself to Russell Brunson, that's like, he's too far. Like, imagine if I was a motivational speaker, all right, and that was my profession, Me comparing myself to Tony Robbins, it'd be impossible for me to compare myself to that, because I'm like, Tony, you've been at this game for like 60 years. I don't know, maybe less than that, 40 years. I can't see myself getting close to you. But like, there's a couple of marketers on this list that I'm like, yeah, you get a few years on me, but I feel like I'm modeling what you're doing. I think I can reach where you're at in the next few years if I continue doing X, Y, and Z in my career. And then there's others that are like, man, if I keep focused and keeps, nose to the grindstone, I can see myself getting to your level in the next 10 to 15 years. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of why I set up this podcast list as well too, because there are some people that are like obtainable. And to some of you, you might be thinking the same thing to me. You might be thinking like, Javier, like you're too far up as far as marketing knowledge. I don't think I'll ever be able to catch up to you, or vice versa. You might be thinking like, I'm not that far off from what you're talking about, Javier. Like, this is good. But this is why I listen to these other podcasts, because I'm trying to get myself higher up. I'm trying to level up. And this is why you listen to podcasts. This is why you should be spending your free time listening to these things. If you're not doing that, listen to audiobooks. But podcasts, they're relevant today, okay? And you can listen to them almost any time. And if you're like, well, it's just, I don't listen to them because I don't get all the information and I can't apply it all. That's not the point. The point is to absorb all this information, and when the time comes, something in your head is going to say, I've heard this before, and I remember this. Let me see if I can research it again and find it and regurgitate it again. But there's something that ticks, and then your mind will just do its thing. And I do that countless times. So listen to podcasts, not just mine. Okay. All right. So 3 things before I let you guys go. Number 1, please give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. 5-star would be the best, obviously. I feel as though I'm delivering the best content possible for the facility management space, especially in marketing, because I believe I'm the only person that is offering marketing, consulting, and advice and training for facility management companies like yours. Okay. Number 2, connect with me on LinkedIn. Yes, I want to connect with you. I want you to engage with me. Okay. Like, people have been engaged with me over the past few weeks. I love it. That helps me know that I'm putting out the right type of content. Tell me your wins. Tell me your losses. Tell me like, hey, Javier, I tried this and this didn't work. Tell me, share things with me. Or like, hey, Javier, I tried this. I think you're full of shit. Why are you full of shit? And then I can help you figure out why I'm not full of shit. And then, or I'm like, I think I got that one wrong. All right. So yeah. And then number 3 is share this podcast with somebody else. Take like 5 seconds. Share this podcast on a DM on LinkedIn or a text message. Share it with someone, because the more we can grow this industry, the better the FMs are going to be picking out great businesses to do business with. You want those FMs to be like, yeah, I picked a good company because A, they have great messaging, they tell great stories, their service is amazing, they stand behind what they do. Those FMs deserve it. And the only way to do this is by all of us raising our standards and how we market. Okay, so hope this was helpful. I'll talk to everybody later.